So this is another episode of Hidden History combined with some more recent stuff. So this is we'll first start with stuff that took place 25 years ago. The whole first visit thing. Some information will be familiar, other stuff will be like really kind of obscure. I only occasionally mention it. The point of this one though is to talk about the electronic malfunctions of certain equipment. So in October of '96, on my first visit, I go through a little experience and I capture something on film. Something that I could only see through a viewfinder, but one eye could not, the old shoulder cam stuff. It's something that's moving back and forth, very poor footage, but it brings me back to, how I all started with this stuff. Like I can find some answers here. There's something weird going on. And this is going to play a role with some information that happened this year in 2021. Now, on the second visit, which is where the electronic malfunction comes in, this was again, this is October 28th of '96. I could always seem to remember that date, but not my first time coming here. Go figure. Anyway, friends are coming. One's a skeptic, one that was with me on the first visit. And I handed off one of my two-way radios, a Motorola. I carried a Motorola P50, and I gave him, this other guy, Motorola Spirit 3. Yeah, I know, Spirit, right? But that was the model. And the point was that if I was going to come here alone, and if they needed to get in touch with me, they could just use a radio. And back then, I was doing a lot of mental stuff where I would just put these thoughts out, or I would receive stuff. It was a really interesting time in my life going through all that, beginning stages. So what I did was, before they came, I meditated by the Fulton Monument near a base to a stone that's missing, to the base of a stone that's missing that was relocated to another cemetery, and that would be on the southwest portion of the Fulton Monument. And leaned back against it with my back up against the stone, and I took the two-way radio off and put it to the side and started to do my meditations. Now, I just was putting thoughts out saying, if there is an intelligence here, if there's somebody, I think I even threw out words like spirit or whoever you are. I was still very open, even though I had a lot of questions about death. I just kept things kind of neutral. I said I can do a lot of mental tricks. If you can hear me, maybe I can receive you mentally. If I'm not getting the message, you can always try and just mess with my radio. Maybe cause it to go erratic, some interference or something. I don't know what you're capable of. And at some point during this meditation, I felt like something was near me. Now, this was very similar to when I would be slightly dozing off or sleeping, and I would get a sense that something was there. And sure enough, normal people would eventually come to the house, eventually, pull in the driveway and get in. I would get the sense of things, whatever. So it was that same familiar feeling, and I look around and I don't see anybody. And I look for the radio, because I was actually more paranoid about the radio being stolen while I was just kind of zoned out. And so I go back into that meditative state, and then the radio goes off, just all this pure static, really loud, and picked up the radio, and I'm like, what's going on with this thing? It's just pure static, and even the volume control wasn't really working. It was just at full volume. Like, this is not technically possible. It should still lower the volume. And I thought maybe the radio was broken or something, and the static wouldn't stop. So I had started walking outside the cemetery. I just got that uneasy feeling, like, what's going on? This just feels weird. And started walking down the trail on the outside, and I just get past the cemetery fence line near where there used to be an old broken drainage when there was a hole in the trail. And that's when it clicked. I'm like, oh my God, I remember, like, I told them, if you can interfere with the radio, go ahead and do it. And as soon as I thought that, radio goes back to normal. Now, this radio never ever did that before, and it didn't do that afterwards, where it was just like this constant static stuff. And it used a subaudible tone for the squelch system and so on and so forth. So if you're into this technical stuff, you can probably understand it. So there's that thing, I'm asking for the interference. Now, in the same day, eventually, these my friends show up, and I've got the camcorder, and we're going around doing our thing, and sure enough, you see this classic video I've played before with the color swirling stuff, and it's, again, electromagnetic interference, and I give an explanation about how RF can cause a similar effect, but nowhere near what we saw. Remember, similar. And I mentioned before somewhere in the past where somebody in a newsletter mentioned this footage years later, and somebody in the military made the same comments I did. So, we're going down this path of interference, and it has to be localized. It's not something that has to be a pretty strong signal, some near you. And I thought, wow, this is getting pretty cool. I'm asking for interference, and I'm getting this interference stuff. And years down the road, I started experiencing more of that stuff when I would ask for it. But we're not going to get into that. Where was I? Let's see. Yeah, so I'm just kind of documenting that part, the timeline of that day of just interference patterns. Stuff that's never talked about is that on the very, very first visit, we were having some occasional two-way radio problems. So this was technically a different day. And then so these are 2-watt radios. I'm standing in the cemetery, actually near the famous, lady sitting in headstone kind of area, that photograph. And my buddy, John, he's outside the cemetery fence between the creek and the cemetery fence there, that zone, that quarry zone. And we couldn't communicate. I mean, we'd key up, we'd try to talk, and we just couldn't do it. We were having these really weird issues, and again, this has never happened before, and even after that. So why were we having this limit of communication? And occasionally the radios would act erratic. Like you'd hear just quick bursts of static, which nobody was keying or anything. It's got that subaudible tone, and we shouldn't be getting that. Again, it didn't do that before with these radios, only here. And so on the second visit, just randomly as we were leaving, I said, hey, I'll grab this frequency counter with me, and it shouldn't really detect crap. It was one of these really bad frequency counters. I said, well, I'm thinking some localized source of interference is happening. Maybe I'll pick up something on this frequency counter. It's kind of a joke. I really don't want to get into this part, but we were just having some fun with this frequency counter, just being radio dorks that we were. And because we were all CB radio dudes too, so we were all into that crap. However, on that first visit, this is a non-electronic interference type subject, and it's going to relate to something that happened this year, 2021. So we have this object that's moving back and forth, and eventually, before I pan away, it goes around the faulted monument. Now this thing is, let's guess it's a foot long, whatever. I call it the brick or something, just kind of levitating, bouncing. And I was going through some weird stuff after I came back in around 2015, 2016. And it was like my interactions with what was going on here just went through the roof. And I'm just not really telling many people, but my interactions it got to a point where I'm like, okay, I guess I was right. No, you are not dead people. And someday I'll definitely have to get into that. But okay. I don't want to confuse things, but there was a period of time after the Mysterious Sounds event, if you're familiar with that video, where I put those thoughts out, and then we got the singing and the tones and the statement stuff, that stuff that raises a lot of eyebrows for people. But around the anniversary date, so that would be in 2019, you know how we get like you get that song in your head, and you just can't get some song out of your head? This time it was, I could hear the song. It was just the most fucking bizarre thing. I'm at work, I'm going to work, and I'm actually hearing this little snippet of this song. And I'm like, how the hell am I what's my brain doing? How am I hearing it? I get to work, and I'm hearing the same little loop of this part of the song. And you get that feeling like, you have to look up the lyrics. Like, it ain't my thought. I'm like, oh, come on, what is this? This is getting weird. So I look up the lyrics, and it was like, wow, you've got to be kidding me. And right now this song is kind of private, but maybe one day I'll actually play it. I made some secret videos behind the scenes in case more came out about this song. So it's one of those side projects. However, this year, when I was doing the soil resistivity data, where I was putting the rods in the soil, testing electrical resistance of the soil, It was a pretty humid day or whatever. It was pretty hot, and I'm like, I just need, to rest. And I go and I sit down, and nobody's showing up for hours. This has been like the slowest year I've ever seen, ever. Let's pause the plane. That was a long plane. Now I lost my train of thought. Where was I? I don't want to rewind here. Okay, yeah, so I'm doing that soil resistivity thing. It's been the quietest year, and nobody's coming around. It was kind of nice in a way, kind of have it to yourself for hours at a time. I thought, wow, I got my little Bose speaker. I'm like, I'm going to crank up that particular song, as a tribute, like DJ putting out a tribute to you guys, and I remember months before this happened, I put out this kind of like random thought. I'm like, that thing that was bounced in front of the Fulton Monument from years ago. I'm like, it'd be nice if you replicate that, but big, just huge, like in foot, like 3 feet long, kind of big, and have it come down a trail or something, real clear view or whatever. And so this plays in a role with this. So I'm there and I'm playing the song, and it looked like somebody was coming down the trail. I'm thinking, oh, God, damn it, all this time it's been quiet. Because it looked like somebody was walking their dog, and I'm watching, like a black dog or whatever, and I realized there's nobody by the dog. Nobody's walking the dog, and I'm like, and I'm able to stare at this thing for a while. I'm like, that's no dog. Holy shit! And it's this big black solid thing just going down the trail, bobbing like this, real slow. And I'm just staring at this thing, right? And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. And then eventually just like fades away. And then it occurred to me moments later, I'm like, oh, I actually asked them to do that. This is so cool. This is so bizarre. And there's going to be a lot of these things that happened this particular year, 2021, like this. I don't know, it's going to get, when I start repeating this stuff, telling the stories, it's going to get pretty funky. And, it's funny, Jim Grayzek, he wrote some books on the paranormal. He was combined with Dale Kaczmarek. And back in the day, Dale Kaczmarek helped write a chapter in a book from True Tales of the Unknown. Jesus, now I'm blanking on the thing. True Tales of the Unknown, the Uninvited. And in that, he talks about this dog that somebody had witnessed, and it faded away into nothingness, right? And I'm like, that's kind of weird, Like, well, I know it wasn't a dog. It was just like a replica of what I had witnessed, on camera. Another plane coming. So here I am thinking about this dog incident, and I thought about Jim Grayzek and how he wrote about his experience with the dog. Now, me personally, on his story, and I talked to him about it, like, dude, I don't think you saw a ghost dog, but that's just my opinion. But you did make it kind of popular. You writing about it kind of like didn't give birth to the legend, but you really like reinforced it by just talking about it. Honestly, I've never seen a ghost dog here, but I guess it could happen. But during that time, I'm like, oh, I wish Jim would stop by. I'd like to talk to him about this. This is just kind of weird. And who shows up the next day? Jim. I just, no fucking way. Right? So I'm talking to him about it and trying to explain him to the whole experience. I'm like, I don't know if I'll talk about it, but it did happen, and I thought about you, and now here you are, man. And, well, now here I am talking about it on video. And, cool stuff, man. A lot has happened this year. I'm probably going to tell everything. Some of it I did, but I left some details out because I wanted to see if other people were experiencing it at the time. But unfortunately, we've had a lot less people visiting. So, all right, it passed. Had to have a smoke too. I like to, when I tell these stories, they're just stories, right? You're just hearing somebody else's story. So what I want to do too is, and I tell that to a lot of people here when I talk to them in person, like, I want to give something, like the story is the appetizer, but a picture, a video, audio clip, that's the meat. I want to give you something to really chew on, not just some story. And there's going to be times where not everything is going to be filmed. Not everything is going to be document it in that way, you're going to have to take witness testimony. It's just the way it is. You know, they do that in the courts, right? I mean, there's something to it. Yes, you can abuse witness testimony. You can lie. But that's just not what I'm about. That would be just horseshit, you know. Where's the fun in that, you know? I mean, you go through enough experiences, it's like, what's the point? It's like, just tell the real deal. And, you know, this year, yeah, I can't wait to tell you. It's going to be really fun, I think. But one of them relates to me witnessing somebody walking down the trail and disappearing. And it's the details that I left out on purpose, because in case this was a wave of phenomena, sometimes these things do come in waves. I wanted to see if anybody would add those extra very bizarre details. And yeah, what else is there? I guess that's kind of it for today. I don't think it was going to come in a wave anyway. I had done something prior to this event happening with the person walking down the trail. Again, I'll leave that for another video so it makes more sense. So, and as far as electronic interference goes, there is more to it. I'll make a separate thing for other people having their experiences with that, especially when you're, because there's those backstories. Those people will ask for the interference, specifically ask for it, and then they'll start getting that interference. And I think we should talk about it. It should be pretty fun. So, until next time.